Hello everyone and welcome back to the 500 horsepower tournament. I don't have anything else to say, so let's get into it. So, for part 2 of the third round, we're gonna be racing at the European wonder that is Red Bull Ring. And to clarify for the ones who don't know, yes, grid orders are based on how many points everyone has. And with that now confirmed, let's get into the races. So, for the first heat, we have Buck Sargent, Howard Hughes, Brett Fox, Leiter, Reagan, SVTVP, and Mojave King. Right away, the race begins with Brett Fox overtaking Buck Sargent. And so does Reagan and Mojave King heading into the first corner. Heading into the next corner, it looks like Brett Fox is trying to make sure nobody overtakes him. And from what I can tell, he seems to be succeeding. And now that we reached the uphill, it looks like Mojave King tries to overtake Reagan. And he managed to do just that on the braking zone. However, the Countach goes wide, allowing the Impreza to reclaim its position. And same can be said for Buck Sargent, who has now reclaimed the podium, due to Mojave King slowing down Leiter and SVTVP while recovering. And that gives Brett Fox an opportunity to pull away from everyone a bit. While Reagan is now just trying to keep up with the Focus RS. Looking at the back of the grid, it looks like SVTVP tries to overtake Leiter. But the Shelby is not gonna give up its spot that easily. Fortunately for the C7 Corvette, however, overtaking it was easier done than said. And Mojave King has already managed to catch back up to Buck Sargent, who is currently defending his podium spot from the Countach. And heading into the final corners of the track, it looks like that continues to be the case. And so, Reagan is trying to catch Brett Fox, who is currently in first place. And while that is happening, Mojave King has successfully overtaken the Firebird. Across the final corner he goes, as it looks like he is now trying to catch up to Reagan heading into the second lap. While further in the back, SVTVP overtaking Leiter allows him to now catch up to Buck Sargent too. And as the gap between the Firebird and the C7 closes in on this corner, it looks like he succeeded in that. However, he has not reached overtaking distance yet, with the overtake not being successful. But on the opposite end, Mojave King managed to overtake Reagan easily, and also attempts to take the lead away from Brett Fox on the hairpin corner. But he is not quite successful, as Brett Fox overtakes him due to going wide. But after that, the Countach easily claims gold medal. And despite Brett Fox not being in first place anymore, he still redeemed himself after last race. Now going through the middle section of the track, he is trying to make sure nobody else catches up to him. Although it might not be very easy for him, as SVTVP managed to catch up to Reagan and is trying to overtake him now. Mojave King is building a lead heading into this corner, with Brett Fox not too far behind and with SVT overtaking Reagan on the set corner. Meaning that keeping second place may or may not be more difficult for Brett Fox now. Meanwhile in the back, it looks like Buck Sargent is successfully holding off Leiter. Heading into these final corners of the track, it looks like Mojave King is as good as always, and Brett Fox is just trying to hold his ground over the C7 Corvette, as the gap between one another doesn't seem to be shrinking as quickly as the viewers initially thought it would. As for Reagan, he's just trying not to let the classic muscle cars catch up to him heading into the third and final lap. And so, SVTVP heads into this corner while trying to catch up to his former budget rally mobile. In the meantime, it looks like Buck Sargent was able to hold off Leiter, and is now battling against him for 5th place on this corner. Looks like it's neck and neck between the Firebird and the Shelby. But as Leiter builds up more speed on the straight, it looks like he comes out on top in the end. And now is trying to catch up to Reagan, who kinda got gapped by the podium placers. Going on to this speed section here, it looks like SVTVP successfully caught up to Brett Fox. But whether or not he will be able to overtake him is still undetermined. Either way, heading into the braking zone right after the speed section, it looks like the C7 Corvette has reached the Focus's overtaking distance. And thanks to the Impreza not having much pace on Red Bull Ring, it looks like Reagan now has to deal with Leiter, who is slowly but steadily catching up to him. SVTVP tries to overtake on this corner but does not succeed. The battle between these two is getting really close, and it all comes down to the final section of the track, in which SVTVP continues to be in overtaking distance but is unfortunately not able to overtake, with Brett Fox actually gapping the C7 a bit. And it's now down to the final corners between these two. Will SVTVP overtake, or will Brett Fox keep the second place? But before we get the answer to that, Mojave King finishes first, getting 8 points. But yeah, it looks like Brett Fox keeps the second place, earning 6 points, while SVTVP in third gets 4 points. Reagan nearly earning 4th place with 3 points over Leiter, who gets 5th and 2 points, while Buck Sargent only gets 1 point in last place. For the second heat, we have A-Lord GT, Tom the Cat, Fancy Wreck, Virgil, Oatmeal Scucolotti on the road again, and W12. As soon as the race starts, Tom the Cat easily overtakes A-Lord GT, while Virgil has overtaken Fancy Wreck, and so did Oatmeal Scucolotti and W12 heading into the first corner. And now we reach this straight where Virgil tries to take the second place away from A-Lord. But it looks like the task at hand is not the easiest. And we reach the braking zone with everyone being pretty evenly matched. We head into the hairpin corner as the Tesla goes wide, allowing A-Lord and Virgil to overtake him. Not only that, but it looks like Tom the Cat is feeling extra risky today as he let everyone overtake him. And yes, that includes the Beeble bus, which was in last place prior to that. But, I mean, this is just the beginning of the race, so things still might take a turn for the Tesla. And so, on the middle section, it looks like W12 built a respectable lead over Fancy Wreck. And in the front, it also looks like Virgil has successfully overtaken A-Lord, with Oatmeal Scucolotti also trying to overtake the Greddy Fuguzette. However, A-Lord GT is not gonna let go of second place that easily. But while that is happening, W12 is pretty much failing to keep up with the podium placers. Plus, Oatmeal Scucolotti being held off by A-Lord allows Virgil to build a gap over him. But unfortunately for the LFA, that doesn't last very long as Oatmeal Scucolotti successfully overtakes A-Lord on the final section of the track. And now we're about to see if Virgil can hold his ground over Oatmeal Scucolotti as the second lap begins, with A-Lord GT now trilling on the podium spot. Meanwhile in the back, it looks like Tom the Cat has successfully overtaken Fancy Wreck, and is now off to catch up to W12's Audi TT, which itself is not the fastest in this race. But that doesn't mean he can't at least try to hold off the Tesla. And it looks like in the front that A-Lord GT is trying not to get gapped too much by the GT40, as it closes in the gap on the LFA a bit, but not enough to actually overtake Virgil yet. I guess this can be considered as old supercar versus new supercar. And heading through this speed section, it doesn't look like anything changes for A-Lord really. As for W12, it looks like he is currently being chased down by the Tesla. And it also looks like Tom the Cat finds an overtaking opportunity on the braking zone, allowing him to overtake the TT, but then he got overtaken back by W12. And it also kinda looks like the Beeble bus is getting left behind, which is unfortunate. And while Tom the Cat tries to overtake W12 again, A-Lord GT is chilling with a respectable lead over both of them. And it doesn't look like A-Lord's lead is gonna be shrinking yet. Meanwhile, Oatmeal Scucolotti seems to be struggling against the LFA. since from what I can tell, it looks like the GT40 has actually been gapped by Virgil. And heading through the final corners, it doesn't look like anything is gonna change position-wise between the two. But whether or not it will change on the third and final lap, we'll just have to wait and see. And even though A-Lord GT's goal of not getting gapped by the GT40 failed, at least he didn't lose the podium yet. Heading through the start-finish straight, Tom the Cat finds yet another overtaking opportunity on W12 and takes it, allowing the Tesla to overtake the Audi TT on the braking zone. And even though he goes wide on the first corner, he still keeps his position over the Audi, with him now trying to catch up to A-Lord and take the podium spot away from him. And while this battle for the podium starts, this battle for the first place between the two supercars pretty much comes to a close, as Virgil is easily able to hold his ground over Oatmeal Scucolati. And now heading through the second half of the track, it doesn't look like anything is gonna change between these two position-wise. But while they are chilling in the top two spots, whether or not it's gonna be A-Lord or Tom the Cat claiming third place is still unclear. It looked like the Tesla tried to overtake the Greddy, but it didn't succeed, getting gapped a bit by A-Lord on this corner, but Tom the Cat is easily able to gain that time back. He tries to overtake again and succeeds this time, claiming the podium spot while A-Lord fell down to 4th. And heading through the final section of the track, it looks like he already cemented himself the third place by building a gap over A-Lord. And W12 wasn't able to keep up with him either. Heading to the final corners of the track, it's safe to say Tom the Cat's Tesla has proved itself with that impressive last to third run. And just like that, we have our finishing order of the race. Virgil gets 8 points, Oatmeal Scucolati on the road again gets 6 points, Tom the Cat gets 4 points, A-Lord GT gets 3 points, W12 gets 2 points, and Fancy Wreck gets 1 point. And that's the end of this very interesting race. For the third heat, we have Private First Class Chuck Patterson, Zetsu, Sophie, Ferrari, Halo, and Mojave Queen. Anyways, we now head off. Private First Class Chuck Patterson heading through the first straight pretty much gets overtaken by everyone apart from Sophie. And as a result of that, Zetsu takes the lead with Ferrari, Halo, and Mojave Queen chasing him down into the next straight. It also looks like Halo and Ferrari already reach overtaking distance before they even get to the braking zone, which is where Mojave Queen comes out of nowhere and makes a move on the Vision GT. And both of them going wide a bit on the hairpin allows Halo to take the lead, with Ferrari also trying to overtake Zetsu while he's at it. We now head into the next braking zone as it looks like Halo and Mojave Queen are battling against each other. And also Ferrari managed to overtake Zetsu, with the Vision GT falling down to 4th place already. But while Zetsu is trying not to lose any more positions, Chuck Patterson is trying to make sure Sophie doesn't overtake him. And it seems to be working since the C3 doesn't seem to be having any opportunities to overtake the C2 yet. And so, on the final section of the track, Zetsu is trying to make sure he doesn't get gapped by Ferrari. And from what I can tell, it does seem to be working, for now at least. While Halo is trying to hold his ground over Mojave Queen, who may or may not end up in another fight for first place. And it looks like she manages to close in the gap a bit. And we head into the second lap as it looks like the said battle is actually starting between the two, while Ferrari is just trying to keep up with them but not really succeeding, and same can be said for Zetsu. Heading through the start-finish straight, it looks like Zetsu is actually losing ground to the C8 Corvette, with him not really being able to do much about it. And now reaching the straight that heads into the uphill, it looks like Ferrari is actually keeping up with Mojave Queen, who herself successfully caught up to the Hatsune Miku Porsche. And as Halo goes wide a bit, the 512BB tries to overtake and succeeds, with Mojave Queen now being in the lead, while Halo is now trying to gain back the time he lost to her. As for Ferrari, there's not really much to say at the moment. He's not gaining ground, but he's not losing ground either. Going through the middle section of the track, it looks like Ferrari is trying to close in the gap on Halo. But unfortunately for him, it doesn't look like Halo's gonna give up that easily. Meanwhile in the back, it looks like Zetsu really got left behind here. And it also looks like Sophie has successfully overtaken Chuck Patterson, with her now off to try to catch up to Zetsu. However, whether or not she will succeed is unclear at the moment. But that doesn't stop her from trying. And so, with another potential position loss, Zetsu is trying to make sure she does not catch up to him. Making it to the final corners of the track, it really looks like Zetsu's Vision GT can't catch up great. Meanwhile, Ferrari, who is now heading into the final lap, seems to be really evenly matched with Halo and Mojave Queen. Heading through the start-finish straight, it doesn't look like anything is gonna change between these three. But honestly, that's probably because all three of them have quite a big gap over each other. And heading into the uphill, it looks like Mojave Queen's gap over Halo seems to be growing a bit. But there's still a possibility that someone might go wide on the braking zone and lose their positions. But actually making it to the braking zone and through the hairpin corner, it doesn't look like that happens for either of the three, which pretty much makes things more boring for the viewer and harder for me to commentate given there's nothing happening. But yeah, it looks like Halo's gap over Ferrari has grown a lot since the last corner. In the meantime, Zetsu is just trying to make sure that Sophie does not catch up to him. Anyways, from what I can tell, it looks like the gap between the C8 and the Hatsune Miku Porsche keeps growing and shrinking back and forth. However, Ferrari was not once able to reach the Porsche's overtaking distance, which really must suck. And now that we're reaching the final section of the track, it looks like Mojave Queen's gap over the two of them did not shrink one bit. But it was good to see the Porsche and the C8 Corvette at least try to keep up with the 512BB, even if they didn't really win the battle against it. Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. But enough of going off topic. As we head through the final corners, the finishing order between everyone seems to be set in stone. Mojave Queen comes out on top between everyone, finishing first, while Halo places second, Ferrari is third. Zetsu successfully holds his ground over Sophie in the C3 Corvette, getting 4th place overall, while Sophie herself is in 5th place, and Private First Class Chuck Patterson is in 6th place. For the 4th heat, we have Jakubek, Arcade Freddy Fazbear, Pin, Charles Leclerc, and Max Verstappen. And we start the race off with what looks like Jakubek already trying to build a gap over everyone, as it looks like Freddy Fazbear got instantly overtaken by Pin. And heading through first corner and into the uphill straight, it looks like Charles Leclerc also overtook him. And on the said uphill, it looks like the hippie manages to successfully overtake Arcade. And from what I can tell, going into the hairpin corner, it looks like Jakubek actually managed to build a gap over everyone, which itself is really quite surprising to see. But unfortunately, the gap itself doesn't last very long, as the hippie manages to catch up to the Beetle, or at least it caught up way quicker than the others. And speaking of them, Arcade is trying to make sure Charles Leclerc does not overtake him. And Freddy Fazbear is currently holding off Max Verstappen. Heading through this corner, it looks like all 4 of them are pretty evenly matched so far. And as they go through the actual corners themselves, it looks like Pin successfully catches up to Jakubek. But luckily for Jakubek, he didn't reach overtaking distance quite yet. Going into the final section of the track, it really looks like both of them are very evenly matched. And same can be said for Archiadli and Charles Leclerc, who are currently battling against each other too. In the said battle, it looks like Archiadli is winning currently, with Charles Leclerc not really being able to reach overtaking distance yet. And further back, it looks like Freddy Fazbear continues to hold off the M2 competition. So let's see if any of that changes on the second lap. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case for Max Verstappen. He reaches the Ferrari's overtaking distance, but unfortunately isn't able to overtake. Heading to the uphill again, it looks like Charles Leclerc manages to catch up to Archiadli a bit. And while doing so, he nearly reaches overtaking distance of the RGT. And same can be said for the hippie in the front, as it looks like Jakubek goes wide a bit, allowing Pin to nearly overtake him. But luckily for the Beetle, it actually manages to beat the hippie on the speed section, allowing him to keep the lead for a bit longer, while the hippie continues to be looking for an overtaking opportunity on Jakubek into the actual corners themselves, as it doesn't look like either of them are gonna be giving up easily. But while that is happening, Archiadli continues to win against Charles Leclerc in the F40. And from what I can tell, Freddy Fazbear is still holding off Max Verstappen. But either way, it looks like Archiadli and Charles Leclerc seem to be pretty evenly matched, as their gap doesn't seem to be growing nor shrinking. Meanwhile, in the front, it looks like Pin manages to catch up to Jakubek a bit. However, overtaking distance was not reached yet, as it looks like Jakubek, despite having to brake earlier on corners, is actually making things work. And despite reaching overtaking distance on this corner, Pin wasn't actually able to overtake. While in the back, it doesn't look like anything changed for Max Verstappen, as he is still being held off by Freddy Fazbear. But with one lap remaining, there's still a chance that outcome might change. Heading through the start-finish straight, he tries to overtake again, and again he fails at it. And heading into the uphill straight again, it looks like Archiadli is chilling, while Charles Leclerc is successfully catching up to him thanks to Slipstream. Meanwhile, in the front, it looks like the hippie got gapped by Jakubek. But as the Beetle has to brake earlier, Pin uses that opportunity to overtake it, successfully claiming first place heading into this speed section. But as he builds up more speed on the speed section, it looks like Jakubek actually catches back up to the hippie, but unfortunately doesn't overtake it back due to having to brake earlier. And even though Charles Leclerc was close to overtaking Archiadli, he didn't. But someone who did was Max Verstappen, as he finally got out of the last place spot by overtaking Freddy Fazbear. However, with Charles Leclerc already having that much of a gap over him, it is too late for him to be gaining back any more positions. And heading through the final section of the track, it's safe to say Archiadli won against Charles Leclerc in this battle. And the Beetles' performance here was also really impressive. But given there doesn't seem to be any last-minute overtakes on these set corners, it looks like our finishing order seems to be determined. Across the final turn he goes and into the finish line, as it looks like Pin in first place gets 8 points, while Jakubek in second gets 6, Archiadli in third gets 4, Charles Leclerc in fourth gets 3, Max Verstappen in fifth gets 2, and Freddy Fazbear in dead last gets 1. For the fifth heat, we have Thunderstorm Gaming, me, Marzo, Interrupting Octopus, Xolstis, and Julie Kanoto. As soon as the race starts, you can see that I managed to overtake Thunderstorm Gaming right away. And going into the first corner, it looks like Interrupting Octopus has been overtaken by Julie Kanoto. And onto the uphill straight we go, as it looks like Zolstis also managed to overtake the MX-5. It also looks like Julie Kanoto is trying to overtake Thunderstorm Gaming, as he's already climbed up to 3rd place, but unfortunately fails to find an overtaking opportunity on the hairpin, while Marzo and Zolstis are kinda just trying not to get left behind. And while Interrupting Octopus is trying to gain back the positions he lost, Thunderstorm Gaming was actually able to build a bit of a gap over the RX Vision, but unfortunately that gap really shrunk on the speed section. And while that is happening, I pretty much managed to build a gap over everyone, as my 996 is just really good at building gaps. Heading into the actual corners themselves, it looks like Julie Kanoto successfully reached Thunderstorm Gaming's overtaking distance. However, the overtake itself was not successful. And during that intense battle, the Devil Z and Octopus are kinda just getting left behind, with Marzo managing to beat them in the fight for 4th place. And going to the final corners, it looks like Zolstis tries to overtake, but I'm not sure if he'll succeed in that. Further in the front, it looks like the RX Vision is still failing to overtake the M3 GTR. And things get even more interesting going into the 2nd lap, cause it doesn't look like Thunderstorm Gaming managed to build a gap. If anything, the RX Vision is still in overtaking distance. And I am kinda just chilling in 1st place at the moment. But now that we head into the uphill straight, it looks like Julie Kanoto successfully overtakes Thunderstorm Gaming. And now that he is off to catch up to the 996, I am not gonna be chilling for much longer. And on the actual hairpin itself, it looks like the RX Vision nearly spins, but Thunderstorm Gaming was unable to reclaim his position. Meanwhile, in the back, it looks like Octopus is kinda just getting left behind by the Devil Z, which itself is now off to catch up to the Jaguar E-Type. But whether or not he will be able to, we'll see on the actual corners. And even though he already got overtaken by Julie Kanoto, Thunderstorm Gaming is trying to make sure he doesn't lose much time to the RX Vision. But at the moment, it is uncertain whether or not that is gonna work. Anyways, it looks like Julie Kanoto is actually managing to catch up to the 996. And going through the final section of the track, the gap is already closing in between the two of us. The RX Vision and 996 build up more speed going into here, and seriously, how many times am I gonna have to witness myself getting overtaken by Julie Kanoto? This is getting ridiculous. But either way, the RX Vision claims the lead heading into the final lap. Meanwhile, further back, it looks like Marzo is actually winning against Zolstis. And Octopus in the MX-5 is just kinda falling behind, which is really unfortunate to see. On the start-finish straight, it looks like Zolstis reaches Marzo's overtaking distance, but the Devil Z unfortunately fails to overtake on the first corner. Still, he continues to battle the E-Type. And on the uphill straight, it looks like Zolstis reaches overtaking distance again, as they both reach the braking zone, giving Zolstis another overtaking attempt. And once they slow down to take the hairpin corner, from what I can tell, I think Marzo actually goes wide a bit on the said hairpin, giving Zolstis an opportunity to take 4th place, which he gladly takes. And also managing to build a bit of a gap over the E-Type. Nice. Now, even though the Devil Z can still try to catch up to the M3 GTR, I don't think Zolstis will be able to take the podium, thanks to how much of a gap Thunderstorm Gaming has over him. As for Marzo, he can still try to overtake Zolstis back, but I don't think any of his attempts are gonna be very successful. In the meantime, Julie Kanoto has easily built a gap over me, as the Porsche 996 may be fast, but it is definitely not the fastest out of everyone. And it shows with me getting gapped over Julie Kanoto. And heading through the final corners, it doesn't look like anything else is gonna be changing position-wise. meaning that Julie Canotto, going through the final corner and into the finish line, has earned himself 8 points for the RX Vision, so congrats to him. While I myself get 6 points, Thunderstorm Gaming gets 4 points, Xolstis gets 3, Marzo gets 2, and Interrupting Octopus only gets 1. And these are the current standings. Even though the outcomes might have been a bit predictable considering Red Bull Ring is a speed track, I had fun watching and commentating the races nonetheless. And hopefully you, the viewer, enjoyed them too. And that's about it for part 2 of round 3. If you enjoyed it, which I know you did, like the video, and maybe even consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the third and final part.